"I will leave the palace," William declared, his voice steady. "I will live as an ordinary man in another town. No one will know I am a prince. I will work for a living, and I will find a woman who loves me for myself." Hello champions. Thank you for watching my stories. Please hit the like button and leave a comment below. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. The Grand Palace of Eldoria was a sight to behold. Its towering spires glistened under the golden rays of the afternoon sun, while lush gardens filled with exotic flowers stretched as far as the eye could see. Inside the palace, the air buzzed with excitement. Servants rushed to and fro, preparing for the grand feast in honor of King Edward's 60th birthday. Among the laughter and chatter in the grand hall, Prince William sat in a corner, his face calm but thoughtful. At 30, William was a striking figure, tall and handsome, with piercing blue eyes that reflected both intelligence and strength. Yet, despite his noble appearance, he was known for his humility and deep sense of justice. He was known as a man of the people. He had regards for every human being, be it a king or a poor man. His love towards his people was what he didn't play with. He made sure that everyone around him was happy, but inside him he wanted more. He wanted a calmed, resilient and ambitious queen, a woman who would be fit to stand by his side as his queen. "William, my son," boomed King Edward, striding across the room in his regal robes. "Why do you sit here brooding on such a joyous day? Come, join the celebration." William rose, bowing slightly to his father. "I am not brooding, father. I was simply lost in thought," William said and smiled. The king gave him a scrutinizing look. "Lost in thought about what, if I may ask?" "About my future," William replied, his tone serious. "Father, I know it is time for me to marry. I know the people of Eldoria expect their future king to have a queen by his side, but I have a request." King Edward raised an eyebrow. "A request? What kind of request?" William took a deep breath. "I wish to marry a woman who knows nothing of our family's wealth or title. A woman who loves me for who I am, not for what I am." The room fell silent as the king processed his son's words. Nearby, Queen Margaret, William's mother, set down her goblet and walked over to them. Her kind eyes narrowed in concern. "William, why such an unusual request?" she asked. "There are many noble women in the kingdom who would make excellent queens." "I do not doubt that, mother," William said, "but I want a wife who will stand by me through all circumstances, a woman whose heart is pure and whose love is genuine. I fear that, if I marry someone who knows of my title, her feelings may be clouded by the crown I wear." The king sighed heavily. "William, this is highly unorthodox. How do you propose to find such a woman?" "I will leave the palace," William declared, his voice steady. "I will live as an ordinary man in another town. No one will know I am a prince. I will work for a living, and I will find a woman who loves me for myself." Both the king and queen stared at him, astonished. "Leave the palace," Queen Margaret exclaimed. "William, you have never lived a day outside these walls. Do you know what you are asking for?" "I do, mother," he said gently, "and it is the only way I can be sure of finding true love." King Edward rubbed his temples, his face troubled. "This is madness, William, but I can see you are determined. Very well. If this is truly what you want, I will not stop you. But know this, the road you are choosing will not be easy." "I understand, father," William said. Queen Margaret sighed deeply, but there was a lot of pride in her eyes. "If this is the path you choose, then may you find what you seek. But promise me, William, that you will be careful. Don't mess yourself up." "I promise, mother," William said, draping his hand across her shoulder. 3 weeks later, Prince William arrived in the bustling town of Onitsha, dressed in simple clothes and carrying only a small bag of belongings. To everyone he met, he introduced himself as William Carter, a modest tradesman looking to start a new life. He rented a tiny shop at the edge of the main market. The shop was small, with peeling paint and creaky floorboards, but it was enough for William's plan. He filled it with a modest supply of goods, basic household items and a few trinkets. Every day, William rose before dawn, sweeping the shop and arranging his wares. The work was tiring, but he found it strangely satisfying. It gave him a glimpse into the lives of the people he hoped to one day rule. At first, his business was slow. Most customers glanced at his humble shop and moved on to the larger, more luxurious stores nearby. But William was patient, greeting each passerby with a warm smile and a kind word. Gradually, his sincerity began to attract attention. Not all attention, however, was genuine. The market at Onitsha was alive with activity. The chatter of merchants and customers, blending with the calls of street vendors selling roasted nuts and fresh fruit. Picking pockets wandering around with great speed, William, now known to everyone as William Carter, had begun to attract regular customers to his small shop. His kind demeanor and unassuming nature made him stand out in a market often ruled by aggressive sales tactics. Among his customers was a young woman named Clara. She was beautiful, with long auburn hair and sparkling brown eyes that seemed to light up the room. Clara was a seamstress who often came to the market to buy supplies. From the moment she set foot in William's shop, her charm captivated him. "Good morning, William," Clara said one sunny afternoon, leaning casually against the counter. "Business seems to be improving." "It is, thanks to kind people like you," William replied, smiling. Clara laughed, her voice melodious. "You always know the right thing to say. You're quite the charmer." "But I am right." Few days later, Clara began visiting William more frequently. She lingered in his shop, sharing stories about her school, and occasionally helping him arrange his wares. It wasn't long before William found himself drawn to her. One evening, as the market quieted down, Clara and William went to one big square to watch football. After watching the football, they decided to trek home instead of taking a bike. As they strolled along the road, some cars flashed a silver light over them. "Clara," William said, stopping to look at him, "you're unlike anyone I've ever met. You're kind, hardworking, and genuine. I think I'm falling for you." Clara's heart swelled with hope. "William, I feel the same. You've brought joy to my life in a way I never expected. But I am a woman. It is not in my place to say it first." "Why? Who said that it is a crime for a lady to express her love and affection first? Who?" "No one said so, but it's one of the unwritten laws in Nigeria. Just like eating rice every Sunday. A girl who approached a man first is seen as a disgrace in Nigeria. I don't know about other countries, but I know that Nigerian girls who did such were," Clara explained. "Who told you that?" William interrupted, laughing. "Who told you that?" Clara said mockingly. "I don't need anyone to tell me. I am in Nigeria." They all laughed out at their argument, but William knew that Clara was right. In Nigeria, it was unorthodox for a woman to approach a man. The man would consider the woman as a worthless person. That night they walked home hand in hand as lovers. From that night on, they began a relationship. William gave Clara everything he could: small gifts, heartfelt notes, and his undivided attention. Though his resources were limited, he made sure she felt loved and cherished. For several months, William believed he had found the love he was searching for. Clara often spoke of their future together, of the life they would build once his business grew. Yet, there were moments when William felt uneasy. Clara's affection sometimes seemed tied to what she could gain. One day, William decided to surprise Clara with flowers, even though it meant using what little he had saved. As he walked toward her shop, he spotted her in front of another person's shop. She was laughing with another man, a wealthy merchant known for his flashy clothes and extravagant lifestyle. Curious, William lingered in the shadows, watching as the man handed Clara a small velvet box. She opened it, revealing a glittering necklace. Her delighted laugh cut through the air. "That's beautiful," Clara exclaimed, throwing her arms around the man's neck. William's heart sank. Summoning his courage, he stepped forward. "Clara," he called, his voice steady despite the pain he felt. She turned, her expression freezing for a moment before she quickly regained her composure. "William, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," he said, glancing at the man beside her. "Who is this?" The man smirked, folding his arms. Clara hesitated, then said, "I don't know him." He must have confused me with someone else. William stared at her, disbelief written all over his face. Clara, don't lie to me. I've given you my trust, my heart ... But Clara turned away, linking arms with the wealthy merchant. I don't have time for this, she said coldly. As they walked away, William stood rooted to the spot, his world crumbling around him. In the weeks that followed, William buried himself in his work. He smiled at his customers, but behind closed doors, the betrayal weighed heavily on him. He began to doubt whether true love even existed. One afternoon, as he was organizing his shop, a young woman walked in. She was unlike anyone William had ever met. Her name was Elizabeth, and she carried herself with quiet grace. Her black eyes sparkled with intelligence, and her voice was warm and genuine. "Hello," Elizabeth said, setting her bag on the counter. "I'm new in this big market and thought I'd stop by your shop." "Welcome to Enicha Main Market," William replied, his tone polite but cautious. Elizabeth smiled. "I've heard good things about you, Mr. Carter. People say you're honest and kind." William chuckled softly. "I will try my best." "But you just said that you are new in this market," William questioned. There's no way she was new in the market, and as well heard so many good things about him. One of them had to be a lie, he reasoned. "I was only joking," Elizabeth chuckled. "My father has a shop at the shopping plaza. We were born and brought up in this market." "All right, you are welcome to my shop, William." Over the next few weeks, Elizabeth became a regular visitor to the shop. Unlike Clara, she wasn't interested in what William could give her. Instead, she asked about his dreams, his struggles, and his life before Onitsha. She even began helping him in small ways, bringing him lunch and offering advice on how to improve his business. William was drawn to her kindness and sincerity, but his recent heartbreak made him hesitant to open his heart again. Still, Elizabeth's presence began to chip away at the walls he had built around himself. Elizabeth's visits to William's shop became the highlight of his days. She brought light to his life in a way he hadn't thought possible after Clara's betrayal. She wasn't just beautiful, she was kind, intelligent, and unafraid to voice her opinions. But unlike William, Elizabeth came from a privileged background. Her father, Mr. Jonathan Green, was one of the wealthiest businessmen in Onitsha Main Market, owning several large estates and businesses in the region. Elizabeth, however, cared little for wealth and status. She had always been drawn to simplicity, which was why she found William so fascinating. Instead of all the rich and wealthy men in the market, one crisp morning, Elizabeth arrived at the shop with a small box of pastries. She placed them on the counter and smiled. "Good morning, William. I thought you might like these." "Elizabeth," William said, shaking his head, "you don't have to keep bringing me things. You've already done so much." "I like helping," she replied with a shrug. "And besides, I enjoy seeing your smile." William chuckled, but his heart was heavy. Though he was growing to care deeply for Elizabeth, he couldn't ignore the gap between their social statuses. It wasn't long before Elizabeth's frequent visits to the market caught the attention of her family. One evening, as the Green family gathered for dinner in their grand dining hall, her father brought up the subject. "Elizabeth," Mr. Green said, his voice firm, "I've heard you've been spending time with a certain shopkeeper in the market. Is this true?" Elizabeth met her father's gaze without flinching. "Yes, father. His name is William Carter, and he's a good man." "A shopkeeper?" Her mother, Mrs. Green, interjected, her tone laced with disapproval. "Elizabeth, we did not raise you to associate with people beneath your station." Elizabeth set down her fork and straightened in her chair. "William may not be wealthy, but he has a kind heart and a strong character. Isn't that what matters?" Mr. Green's expression darkened. "What matters is that you marry someone who can provide for you and uphold the family name. This William is a nobody." Elizabeth's voice trembled with emotion, but she refused to back down. "He's not a nobody to me. He works hard every day, and he treats people with respect. That's more than I can say for some of the so-called gentlemen you've introduced me to." Her father slammed his hand on the table. "You will end this nonsense immediately. Do you hear me?" Elizabeth rose from her seat, her eyes blazing. "No, father, I won't. You may not understand, but I love him, and I won't let you or anyone else dictate my heart." With that, she left the room, her mother calling after her in vain. Word of Elizabeth's relationship with William spread quickly through Onitsha main market. The market buzzed with whispers and speculation. Many of the wealthier merchants scoffed at the idea of a woman from such a prominent family lowering herself to be with a poor shopkeeper. Some of them vowed that if any of their daughters do such, they would behead them. "Did you hear about Elizabeth Green?" one merchant said, shaking his head. "She's throwing her life away for that William Carter." "She's a fool," another replied. "With her connections, she could marry anyone she wants. What does she see in him?" Elizabeth's friends, too, tried to dissuade her. "Elizabeth, be serious," one of them said during a luncheon. "You're giving up everything for a man who can barely afford to take you to dinner." "I don't care about money," Elizabeth said firmly. "William makes me happy. Isn't that what love is supposed to be about?" Her friends exchanged skeptical glances, but Elizabeth ignored them. Despite the mounting pressure, William and Elizabeth's bond only grew stronger. One evening, as the sun dipped, moving towards the palm trees on the street, William invited Elizabeth for a walk. They strolled through the quiet streets of Onitsha, hand in hand. William seemed nervous, glancing at her occasionally with a hesitant smile. "Is something wrong?" Elizabeth asked, tilting her head. William stopped walking and turned to face her. From his pocket, he pulled out a small, plain ring. "I know this isn't much," he began, his voice trembling. "That's all I can afford right now. But Elizabeth, you've shown me what true love looks like. You've stood by me when no one else did. I may not have riches, but I promise to give you my heart, my loyalty, and my life. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Elizabeth's eyes as she looked at the modest ring. "William," she said, her voice soft but steady, "I don't care about riches or fancy rings. All I care about is you. A good man is priceless. You are worth more than 24 carats of gold." She held out her hand, allowing him to slip the ring onto her finger. News of the engagement reached the Green household by the next morning. Mr. Green was livid. "This is an embarrassment to our family," he roared. "She's throwing away her future for a man who has nothing. I warned you initially. I told you that you were giving her too much freedom. Have you seen what it has cost us? How can I even tell my friends that my first daughter is in love with that thing?" Mrs. Green lamented and gnashed her teeth. "Elizabeth has painted my face with charcoal. People are now laughing at me. You won't believe what all these men in my line said today." Mr. Green lamented. "We have to stop her. I am her mother, and I will tell her that she sucked these two breasts. She must do what we want." Mrs. Green tried all her best to dissuade her, but no amount of shouting or pleading could sway Elizabeth. Her heart was set. The wedding was simple and small, held in a modest church on the outskirts of town. None of Elizabeth's family attended, and her absence from the grand Green mansion became the talk of the town. Some people came to the wedding to know if Mr. Green and his family would come. Others came so that they would laugh at Elizabeth. "Can you believe it?" one woman whispered at the market. "Elizabeth Green, living in a shared yard with that poor boy. What a disgrace." "I do not blame her. I blame her parents for allowing that rubbish," another said. Despite the ridicule, Elizabeth stood firm. She moved into William's small apartment, where they shared the bathroom and kitchen with other tenants. Each day, she woke early to prepare tea for her husband, washed his clothes, and cooked his meals. Elizabeth's new life as William's wife was far removed from the luxurious lifestyle she had known. The tiny apartment was cramped and noisy, with neighbors arguing in the corridors and children playing loudly outside. The shared kitchen and bathroom lacked the elegance and privacy of her family's mansion, but Elizabeth never complained. She woke before dawn each morning, preparing tea and a simple breakfast for William. She washed their clothes in a small basin, hung them on a line outside to dry, and cleaned their modest home until it shone. William watched her with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. He knew she had given up everything to be with him, and he worried that she might one day regret her decision. What would she do when she finds out the truth about him? Would she be happy or sad? Perhaps she would be sad because he lied to her, or perhaps she would be happy that she was a queen. "Elizabeth," he said one evening as they sat together on their small bed, "are you truly happy? You've left so much behind to live like this." Elizabeth placed a hand on his cheek, her black eyes filled with love. "William, happiness isn't about mansions or riches. It's about being with the person who makes your heart feel full, and that's you. I will love you till eternity. What if I am rich? I mean, would you have loved me if I am rich?" "William, what kind of questions is this? Just answer me, please." "Yes, I would have loved you. I love your heart, and I don't think even riches would have changed it. Your heart is pure and immaculate. Your sincerity was what brought us together." Her words eased his worries, but deep down, William knew the truth about his identity. It changed everything. Despite her contentment, Elizabeth wasn't immune to the ridicule of others. At the market, whispers followed her wherever she went. "Look at her," one woman sneered. "The daughter of Jonathan Green, reduced to carrying a basket of vegetables like a commoner. And for what?" Another chimed in. "That poor boy. He doesn't even have a proper shop." Elizabeth ignored their taunts, holding her head high as she continued her errands. But the words stung, and some evenings she cried quietly in their small room, although her cries weren't about people in the market, but because of her family. She couldn't have imagined that her family would disown her because she married a man from a lower class. The thought of her family on coming to her wedding always made her shed tears. For what? Just because she didn't marry their choice, one of the rich men in the markets that treated their wives like maids. William, noticing her red-rimmed eyes, tried to comfort her. "You deserve so much more, Elizabeth," he said softly, holding her close. "I have all I need," she replied, her voice steady despite her tears. "As long as I have you, but you still need them. They are your family." William said, "Family? No, I don't need them. They aren't my family again. They rejected me first. You and your household are now my family." William nodded his head and embraced her tightly. "There's love and there's love. Love par love." 2 weeks after their modest wedding, Elizabeth returned home one evening to find William sitting at the table, a solemn expression on his face. On the table before him were 2 passports and an envelope sealed with an elaborate crest. "What's this?" she asked, setting down her bag. William gestured for her to sit. Taking her hands in his, he said, "Elizabeth, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you long ago." Her brow furrowed in concern. "What is it, William?" He took a deep breath. "I haven't been entirely honest about who I am. My real name isn't William Carter. It's William Edward Alexander, and I'm the Crown Prince of Eldoria." For a moment, Elizabeth stared at him, her mind racing. "What are you saying?" she muttered in total confusion. "I left the palace to find someone who would love me for who I am, not for my title or wealth," he explained. "I wanted to know what it was like to live as an ordinary man. That's how I found you, Elizabeth." She pulled her hands away, standing abruptly. "You single quotes Ray ... a prince, and you didn't tell me. You let me think you were just a shopkeeper this whole time." "I'm sorry," he said, standing as well. "I didn't mean to deceive you, but I needed to be sure your love was real." Tears filled her eyes as she processed his words. "And now, what happens now?" William opened the envelope, revealing an official royal letter. "The palace is expecting us. My parents know about you, and they're eager to meet the woman who has captured my heart. There we will celebrate our wedding like the royalty that we are." Elizabeth's head spun. The man she had married, the man she had sacrificed everything for, was not who she thought he was. "Elizabeth," William said, his voice gentle, "I love you. I've loved you from the moment we met, and I'll understand if you're angry or confused, but I want you to know that everything I've said and done has been true. You're the one I've been searching for." The following morning, Elizabeth and William boarded a carriage bound for Eldoria. Elizabeth sat quietly, gazing out the window as the countryside rolled past. William tried to reassure her, but she was lost in her thoughts. When they arrived at the palace gates, Elizabeth's breath caught. The grandeur of the towering spires and sprawling gardens was overwhelming. Servants in fine livery rushed to greet them, bowing deeply as William stepped out of the carriage. "Welcome home, Your Highness," one of them said. William turned to help Elizabeth out of the carriage. Her hands trembled as she took his. Inside, King Edward and Queen Margaret awaited them in the Grand Hall. The king was a formidable figure, his presence commanding, while the Queen's kind eyes softened the room. "Father, Mother," William said, bowing slightly, "this is Elizabeth, my wife." Elizabeth curtsied, her voice so sweet and calmed. "Your Majesties." The Queen stepped forward, taking Elizabeth's hands. "Welcome, my dear. William has spoken so highly of you." The king, though initially stern, gave a nod of approval. "If you've earned my son's love, then you're welcome in this family." Elizabeth's heart swelled with relief. Despite the overwhelming circumstances, she realized that her love for William hadn't changed. The news of Elizabeth's true position as the Queen of Eldoria spread like wildfire, eventually reaching her family. Jonathan Green, Elizabeth's father, who had disowned her for marrying a poor boy, was sitting in his study when a messenger from the palace arrived. The man handed him an elegantly embossed letter bearing the royal seal. Jonathan frowned, confused, as he opened it. The letter was short but impactful. "Dear Mr. Green, you are cordially invited to the Palace of Eldoria to meet with His Royal Highness, King William, and Her Royal Majesty, Queen Elizabeth." Signed, the Royal Chamberlain. Jonathan's hands trembled. "Queen Elizabeth, what is this nonsense?" he muttered. But as he read further, the realization began to dawn. The man his daughter had married, the one he had dismissed as a pauper, was not only wealthy but royalty. His heart sank as he remembered the cruel words he had spoken to Elizabeth. Despite his pride, Jonathan couldn't resist the invitation. He, his wife, and Elizabeth's siblings set out for the palace, their carriage winding through the dusty road. The grandeur of the palace gates left them speechless. When they were ushered into the Grand Hall, they found Elizabeth and William waiting for them. Elizabeth wore a regal gown, her crown glinting under the light, but her expression was soft, her eyes full of emotion. "Father, Mother," Elizabeth said, her voice steady yet warm, "welcome to Eldoria." Her mother burst into tears, rushing forward to embrace her. "Oh, Elizabeth, look at you, you're a queen." Jonathan, however, stood frozen, his gaze fixed on William. You're the prince," he stammered. "Yes, I am," William replied calmly. "But when I met Elizabeth, I was only a man looking for true love, and I found it in her." Jonathan's face turned red as the weight of his mistakes pressed down on him. He cleared his throat awkwardly. I didn't know. If I had, you would have treated us differently." Elizabeth interjected gently. "Father, I didn't marry William because of his wealth or title. I married him because he loved me and respected me for who I am." Her words struck Jonathan like a blow. He realized how shallow his judgment had been. "Elizabeth, I was wrong. I let my pride and ambition blind me to what truly matters. Can you ever forgive me?" Elizabeth stepped forward, her eyes softening. "Of course, Father, I have been angry, but I've always wanted us to be a family." The visit marked a turning point. Jonathan, humbled by the experience, began to see the world and his daughter in a new light. He marveled at her grace as a queen, and her compassion as a wife and mother. During a private conversation, William assured Jonathan, "You may have judged me harshly at first, but what matters now is the bond we build moving forward. Elizabeth cherishes her family, and I want her to have that." Jonathan nodded, his respect for William growing. By the end of their stay, Elizabeth's parents were no longer ashamed of her choices. They returned to their own estate with pride, telling everyone who would listen about their daughter, the Queen, and their son-in-law, the King. Jonathan, now a changed man, often reflected on the lessons he had learned. "Wealth and titles mean nothing if there's no love," he told his wife one evening. Elizabeth was wiser than all of us. Elizabeth, in her generosity, continued to maintain a close relationship with her family, ensuring they were always welcome at the palace. Over time, the wounds of the past healed, replaced by mutual respect and love. The palace seemed even more alive as news spread. Queen Elizabeth was expecting her first child. The announcement brought joy to the people of Eldoria, who celebrated in the streets with music, dancing, and feasts. For Elizabeth and William, it was a new chapter in their lives, a chance to create a family built on love and unity. The months leading up to the birth were filled with excitement and anticipation. William was a doting husband, always ensuring Elizabeth was comfortable and happy. He often joked about how their child might inherit Elizabeth's fiery determination or his stubborn streak. "Let's hope they don't get both," Elizabeth teased one evening as they sat together by the fireplace. "Are you giving birth to twins?" William asked and placed his ear on the protruding stomach. "William, remove your head. The baby is sleeping." "Who told you that she is sleeping? Did you just say she?" "I want to give birth to a boy, please." "No, I want a girl. I want a beautiful girl like you." "No, I want a handsome man like you." And on and on and on they go, arguing if the baby would be a girl or boy. One Sunday morning, Elizabeth went into labor. She was about to put on her church dress after taking her bath, when she noticed the water trailing down from her laps. It was Queen Margaret who told Elizabeth that the way was on the way coming out. The palace was abuzz with activity as the royal midwives attended to her. William stayed by her side, holding her hand and whispering words of encouragement. "You're doing so well, my love," he said, though his own hands trembled with nerves. After hours of labor, the sound of a baby's cry echoed through the room. The midwife wrapped the newborn in a soft blanket and handed him to Elizabeth. "It's a boy," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. Elizabeth cradled the baby, her heart swelling with love. "Hello, my little prince," she whispered, brushing a kiss against his forehead. William leaned in, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome to the world, Edward." Elizabeth gave him a mockery expression. "I won." And William laughed. Raising a child in the palace came with its own set of challenges. While nannies and attendants were always available, Elizabeth insisted on being an active mother. She wanted Edward to grow up knowing the value of love and kindness, not just the privileges of royalty. "I want him to understand the world beyond these walls," Elizabeth told William one evening. "He needs to know the struggles and joys of the people he will one day serve." William agreed. Together, they often took Edward on visits to nearby villages, introducing him to the common folk. The boy quickly became a favorite among the people, his bright smile and curious nature endearing him to everyone he met. As Edward grew older, Elizabeth and William worked hard to balance their royal duties with their responsibilities as parents. Elizabeth often spent her mornings attending council meetings and her afternoons teaching Edward about history, compassion, and leadership. One day, as they walked through the palace gardens, Edward, now a curious toddler, looked up at his mother. "Mama, why do people bow to you and Papa?" Elizabeth knelt down to his level, her voice gentle. "They bow because we are their king and queen. But being a ruler isn't about being served. It's about serving others and making their lives better." Edward nodded solemnly, as if he understood. A few years later, Elizabeth and William welcomed their second child, a girl they named Margaret after the Queen. Princess Margaret was a spirited child with her mother's determination and her father's charm. The siblings were inseparable, often running through the palace halls or playing in the gardens together. Elizabeth adored watching her children grow. Their laughter filled the palace, bringing warmth and joy to every corner. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been?" Elizabeth asked William one evening as they watched Edward and Margaret play. William took her hand and smiled. "I think about it every day, and I know that no matter what, I would have found you. You're my everything, Elizabeth." She leaned her head on his shoulder, content. As the years passed, Elizabeth and William instilled their values in their children. They taught them the importance of humility, kindness, and hard work. One day, as they prepared for a royal banquet, Edward, now a young boy, asked, "Papa, will I be a good king like you?" William crouched beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You'll be an even better king, Edward, because you'll have your mother's wisdom and your own heart to guide you." Elizabeth smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Years later, when Edward ascended the throne as king, he carried with him the lessons his parents had taught him. Under his rule, Eldoria flourished, becoming a kingdom known for its fairness and compassion. Elizabeth and William, now older, but no less in love, watched their children and grandchildren with pride. Their journey from a humble shop in the market to the throne of Eldoria was proof that love, kindness, and determination could overcome any obstacle. As they sat together in the palace gardens, William took Elizabeth's hand. "We've built a beautiful life, haven't we?" Elizabeth nodded, her eyes shimmering with tears of joy. "Yes, we have, and it all began with a simple shopkeeper and a girl who believed in him." Together, they smiled, content in the knowledge that their love had not only changed their own lives, but had left a legacy for generations to come.